Shalom, and welcome back to Psychology of the Parsha. For Parshat Shoftim. The Parsha begins, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha. You shall appoint magistrates or judges and of officers for all your tribes, all your gates. That's what sha'arecha literally means. In all the gates that Hashem gives you, to all your tribes, and they shall govern the people with true justice. The next verse continues and says, Lo tateh mishpat. You should not judge unfairly, or literally, you should not bend the justice. Lo takir panim. You shall show no partiality. Velo tikach shochad. And you should not take any bribes. Why? Ki hashochad ye'aver einei chachamim. For bribes, they will blind the eyes of the discerning, of the wise. V'yisalef divrei tzadikim. And upset the plea of the just. Who is the Torah talking to here? Of course, the Torah is talking to us collectively as a people. We read the Torah every year. The same portion we read over and over again. The Torah speaks to us not only collectively, but individually. Even after appointing judges in our gates, for our tribes, for our cities, the Torah still directs us to appoint judges, to appoint officers who will implement the verdict of the judges. And the Torah still tells us not to take bribes, to be impartial, and so on and so forth. So who's the Torah really speaking to? Or what is the Torah really saying when it's speaking to us? And the answer is, as explained, Shoftim v'shotrim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha. In all your gates, one has to appoint for themselves, in all their gates, in their individual gates, judges, officers. What are those gates? Well, we all have many gates through which things come into us, we absorb, we become impressed with the world around us, and gates through which we omit things, bring it out of us. We are allowed to emanate from us. Our eyes, our ears, our mouth, our nose, our minds. They get influenced by the things we see, the things we hear, the things we imagine. Our hearts, the things we feel, our emotions. And Hashem tells us to apply judges and officers. To always be judging whether that which we're looking at, that which we're exposing ourselves to, is that going to be a good influence or a bad influence? There are times when judges alone are not enough. We need to impose on ourselves strict officers. That doesn't mean we're considering ourselves to be bad people. Remember, every society, when you incorporate a city, when you have a populated area, one of the mainstays of life is you need to have a police force. Setting up a police force, using the taxpayers' dollars for that, does not automatically say that you deem everyone as criminals. On the contrary, what you're saying is we want to live in peace. And considering the fact that there are people that sometimes would get out of line, because that's normal. There are people who may make mistakes or intentional criminal activity. Therefore, in order for us to stay and remain complete and wholesome and have a tranquil way of life as a whole, we need to set up the system in which we have officers and judges and so on. And that's what the Torah is telling us here too. But the Torah continues. And the Torah says, as human beings, I know, Hashem says, that you are prone perhaps to bribery. You are prone to being partial, to partiality. And that is okay, because we all are connected to ourselves. And we all are very forgiving, many times, to our own misdeeds. Or we have that form of bribery which says, it's okay. You've been a good guy all the time, most of the time. You can allow yourself a little slip up. You could, well, like the saying goes in the world of psychology, you deserve it. You deserve it. You're allowed to give yourself a little leeway. And it may be so, but you cannot be the judge on that. You cannot be the true officer on that, because perhaps you are too close to yourself. Perhaps you have that leaning that is actually distorting that true, impartial, objective vision. And thus what the Torah is telling us, and especially as we approach Rosh Hashanah, the Torah is not asking us to be perfect. The Torah is not telling us that there will be a point when we reach absolute perfection. But what the Torah is telling us is to establish a system within which there are checks and balances. And that system has to first come within, and we have to be aware of the fact that there is this problematic issue of bribery, of partiality, and so on, and at the same time go ahead with trying to judge and govern ourselves. And of course with the realization, with the idea, the knowledge that if for some reason this judge here, this officer here, these judges and officers, this system is somewhat inadequate, fine, we go to a higher judge. And this where the role of one having a mentor, a selech harav, which means appoint for yourself a mentor, a judge, a person who is not partial, a person who is not bribed by your inner emotions, that can actually give you a direction, can give you a true judgment, a verdict. And this will be perhaps tantamount to having a court of appeals and then a higher court and so on and so forth. May Hashem grant us always the wisdom, the knowledge, and most importantly, the courage to be objective in our judgment of ourselves, and most importantly, or more importantly, to govern ourselves and to police ourselves to do the right things. Shabbat Shalom.